Hello, and thank you for partaking in the MidPointe Library Oral History Project. Could you please tell us your name, your current position in the library, and what branch you work at?
I'm Brielle Maynor, and I'm the Public Services Director for the MidPointe Library System. And I primarily work at Westchester, but I'm responsible for all of our branches, so I spend time at all of them.
How long have you been in your position, and how long have you been with the library?
Well, that's kind of a tricky question, as we'll get into. I have been in this role since August of 2018, so a little bit over 7 years. 6.5 years earlier in my career, I was a reference librarian at the old Westchester Library on Cox Road.
Could you tell us about your current position and the responsibilities that you have?
Sure. So I usually explain that what I do is I support our branch managers in their role leading their branches, leading their branch teams, giving that frontline direct customer support, and then and problem solving through those various things. And then I support our executive director in the initiatives that he wants to see take place in the branches and the direction that he wants to see them go. Yeah. So I'm kind of working in a couple different directions.
So what is your day-to-day like?
Day-to-day is, I visit the branches just to kind of see what's going on, connect with the staff members. I get calls, emails, Teams chats, various things like, hey, when you have a minute, can you give me a call? I've got a question about, this patron has this issue with their borrower account, or before you read this email, I need to explain a little bit of what happened, or, so just a lot of things like that. There are times when I step in when a branch manager is out for some period of time, or if the position is open. So there are times when I have to step in as kind of a more direct supervisor of the staff at that branch. So I might need to work on, even their work schedule, that kind of thing. And, just kind of problem solving across our locations until it's time to go home.
It seems like it's very complex. How do you keep it all sorted?
I do make a point of having a weekly one-on-one with each branch manager, so we can kind of keep on top of, I know we talked the other day about XYZ. Do you still need anything there? Are we good there? When I came through the branch, I noticed, this thing or that thing. Do you need me to, if you want to put in a requisition and we can do something about, we can spend some money on solving that problem or whatever. So we try to keep on top of those things. And then I sit down weekly with the executive director to just kind of stay in touch with him and, say, hey, this thing is bubbling up, or that thing we were talking about last week, we got that resolved. Here's what that looks like. So really, trying to make that purposeful communication is a big part of it.
Now, for those not familiar, our branches are very different, especially in size and population. So
Certainly.
How do you assist with, maybe the Monroe, which is much tinier than our Westchester branch, or our Middletown branch, or even the New Liberty branch that has its own, challenges because it's a new branch?
Mm-hmm. Now, I do make sure that the branch managers are together for a monthly meeting, and mostly on Teams, but some of those we do in person. Say, Monroe, for example, very cozy. The branch manager there was saying something like, yeah, we're getting great turnout for programming. But, often folks are just kind of leaving right away, not checking much out. And I said, well, at this, you might want to talk to this other branch manager because she had that issue. And, she made sure that we got like a special little display cart of things that she could set right there in the room with the programming. So I try to make those connections for folks. But yeah, Monroe is very cozy. I try to be there and just kind of work out of their sunroom a little bit every so often. Westchester, for so many people, this building is how they experience the MidPointe Library. So just trying to make sure that, anything that we're trying out here, we're learning lessons that we can, and then we're applying what we can at some of our other branches. Middletown, I'm really pleased with a lot of the facilities upgrades that we've made there these last several years. It was the branch we've been operating the longest as a branch. It's not necessarily the oldest building, but it's the one that's been in service as a library the longest. We've learned a lot in that building too, try some different things, bring in some different initiatives, and I'm really pleased with how it looks there right now. Trenton, there's such a anchor of their community. So many of their patrons have been coming in since 2 branches ago when they were closer to the downtown there. When people think of their prototypical neighborhood library, Trenton is the closest thing I think we have. And then Liberty is just, just hopping. I think people who would be like, what do you need a library for in the 21st century? I would like them to come see just all that goes on at our Liberty branch and how much the community how quickly they've embraced the building and the services, the staff, all of it.
So what do you find most rewarding about your position?
Oh my gosh. I just, no 2 days are ever quite the same. You probably hear that in a lot of these interviews, all of us who work at the library. And it's just, the difference that we make for folks. It's not, it may not be what we picture from the library. It's not even quite what it was like when I first started in libraries. So often people are coming to connect with the rest of the community. They're coming because heard or saw something online and are thinking, either I want to learn more about that, or that doesn't sound right. I want to find out more about what's really going on with that. They come in to, it's really from the very basic of, I need to print this, I need to fax this to, my doctor's office, all the way up to, I'm doing this huge project. I'm studying for my real estate license. I'm finishing up my PhD. I just needed some more quiet to finish up. I'm getting my passport so we can go places. I'm so glad that people continue to turn to us in that way at all of our locations for every day.
What do you find challenging about the position?
We've really consciously made a point of hiring folks from a wider array of backgrounds. And it used to be, you kind of worked your way up through libraries. So many of us started as shelvers, and, we've been at this for a long time. That's my situation. So the folks that we've hired in from other places, I've been doing this so long that sometimes I almost have to translate myself. So we do X, Y, Z, da, da. Okay, so let me back up. What that means is, these folks do this work and it looks like this to us. And I just have to remind myself, not everyone's brain works the way yours does, Brielle. Not everyone has the same experience. Slow down, just speed up. So
there are a lot of acronyms in library world, and
yes.
You just assume that everyone knows what this acronym means.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Or collections mean a few different things depending on what the situation is. So
I hear that special collections mean something different to me than it does, or digital collections to most librarians. So I understand that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So what is an accomplishment or project you are particularly proud of in this position specifically?
Right. Oh my goodness. I think probably a few things come to mind. I'm really pleased that we've been able to build a great partnership to have a case manager at our Middletown location. And it took a couple of tries to get that quite where we needed it to be, but it's made a huge difference for patrons who, were particularly stuck. And that's, speaking of bringing expertise from other fields, there was only so far library staff could take folks who needed that kind of human services help. So to be able to expand that and make that so successful, I'm so pleased by that. We also added the lobby stop van to our vehicle fleet that gives us a vehicle that's not quite as big as the bookmobile, but still has some good capacity and lets us get to some different facilities, some different locations, and also bring materials and services in that way.
What is one of the biggest challenges moving forward, either with your position or with libraries in general? Sure.
Let's see. I think we've been very, very fortunate in Ohio that the state government has traditionally funded libraries in a particular way, using a particular portion of income tax that is kind of unusual for states across the country. And, just watching, kind of what the current thinking is on the direction to go with those things. We also now depend on property tax, which is also a more recent development. And just making sure that we're meeting the expectations that folks have of supporting the library, continuing to meet people's needs. And then also trying to think through what are some creative ways to fund, the work that we do, and, kind of keep all those things strong, but still remember that we're here for everyone. We're here for all of the public. The whole idea of public libraries is that you're welcome to come in and browse and use what you need, make your life better, no matter what's in your wallet when you walk in the door. And I think just trying to keep all of that in a reasonable balance and continue to support our frontline staff and just offering that service, not having to, make those calculations, worry through those things. I think just keeping us on a good path there is something that, we're thinking about more and more and trying to problem solve around.
That makes sense. So, my understanding is you're the first person to serve as the Public Services Director. Mm-hmm. How has your position changed and evolved since you started 7 years ago?
Sure. Yes, years ago there had been someone in, I think, an assistant director or deputy director role, but nothing like that role had been filled in, probably close to 10 years before I came on board. When I was hired at the end of 2018, we didn't know a year and a half later what was coming for us with COVID. So there were different initiatives, different things that we were thinking we would be able to tackle. I remember March of 2020, we all went to the Public Library Association conference in Nashville. A bunch of us drove down and went to all these sessions and drove back, and we were talking about when we get back, we should try this and we should try that. And you're having this one thing going on at this one branch. I think that would be a great place to try this other thing that we heard about. And that is not what worked out at all. It's even hard to remember, what were some of those things we were trying to get done? Because we really had to pivot pretty heavily, and then, just been trying to kind of get back to what was a usual kind of service, and then, kind of continue to pivot into people's new expectations. And, it's a different world. For sure. I'm trying to think of what else that isn't COVID related. I think and I remember asking in my interview for the job, why is this position open? Why now? And, the executive director explained to me at the time, he said, it's just, I can't keep up with the individual branches and all the other operations of the library, the facilities, the IT stuff, we just need somebody in this slot to keep up with the day-to-day branches, make sure they're getting what they need so that I can focus on all these other things. And that's more or less been how it's been. Like we said, the day-to-day has changed a little bit. Different stretches of the time have pulled us in different directions, but yeah, it's still pretty much that. It just probably the detail doesn't look quite like we expected.
So you brought up COVID. Mm-hmm. Could you tell us a little bit how public services has changed since or during COVID? Right.
It was, at the time, we weren't quite sure what to expect. And I remember being at the conference, and there we all were at the convention center, just chatting with each other. No thought of, fomites or any of those phrases that we came to. And I remember seeing somebody wearing a face mask, and I thought, oh, she must be worried about whatever that illness is they're talking about that's starting to pop up. I mean, we're a continent and ocean away from where that's going on. I'm sure we'll be fine. And then, not that long after, everything kind of came crashing down. I literally think it was like for the first week of March, we went and came back. And then by like the second or third week, it was like, well, maybe we'll see you in May. Just go home and we'll work from home. And even when we started, so I think the hardest thing really, we did, everything we could figure out to do remotely, stayed in touch with each other, tried to have meetings, like try to share any updates anybody had, what is this going to look like? I think the hardest thing was, coming back, even trying to think through what is this going to look like? We can only have so many people at a time. Working together, working in any given building, there's only so much service we can offer, and still trying to keep up with the governor's, the mandates on how many people could be in the buildings, how, distancing. There were a lot of studies going on about like how long does this live on library materials. We were quarantining things everywhere. I think we had tables that broke because they were holding so many stacks of books that had to quarantine for so many weeks. We didn't know at the time that wasn't really a thing. We didn't find that out until later. But when you circulate things, you want to be mindful. Knowing that a lot of the folks we see through our library and wheels department are they don't come into the library because their health does, even in a typical day, doesn't really allow for that. So trying to be mindful. But, the effects that had on, we ended up having people furloughed. There were folks who we had to let go entirely. And just to think about the talent and, heart of all those folks who we just, what we had, the work we had and the work they had to offer, we couldn't make a match in that moment, or we didn't know how long going forward. So that was the hardest part. It really was. I'm grateful that a number of folks, came back. Some pretty quickly, some it took a while, some came back in different roles. But I was grateful to, we at least a few folks found their way back, and there were some that we were able to say, hey, okay, we opened some of the places in May. It's going pretty well. It's June. Hey, come on back, you folks. So some of those things worked out better than others. And then as far as the service, it did let us offer curbside service. We got to try that out, and still pretty, to this day, we still have folks who come looking for that. So that we got to try that initiative. We'd already been doing a little bit in the way of hold lockers, have been able to expand that, continue to expand that. We'd already kind of extended our reach beyond the walls with outreach programming, the library and wheels department, that kind of thing. But it really pushed us to like, what else could we try? What other lessons can we learn from what other folks are doing? What are we seeing out in the community that it's like, oh, we could tweak that a little bit and do that too. It stretched some of those muscles for us in a way that we might not have ever done if we hadn't had to figure some of those things out.
Could you tell us about your time with the opening of Liberty Center branch? Were you involved with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So it was under construction when I first started. I remember my first day on the job we went to go see the construction site. It may have still been a hard hat area by then. That was August. We opened the first few days of November. There was already a manager hired for it. We already had a few staff on board, and I think I was able to help with the interviewing of the last few people. It was a really innovative project. People kept saying, I've never heard of a public library in a shopping mall. So, got to try something new, see how that went. The shopping center was always great to work with, for sure. They were happy to try something new like we were. And, just to see we had to like roll half of everything out every night or every morning and put it away every night. People would use even the seating that was still available when we weren't open. So it was neat to see, kind of some of the different ways that people would gather, even if we weren't actually open with materials. And then, we were able to use the space kind of creatively. Like we didn't have programming space within the branch, but the mall was like, oh, well, you can have that program over here, down there, or wherever. So, we really tried to stock it with kind of the most popular things. It was very much a hold pickup location. So it was really interesting to kind of select what we thought people would most respond to, and then have them kind of show us what they were most interested in. So that was a really good, kind of lesson in a freshly opened library in the 21st century. And then we took those lessons and kind of what we were seeing develop at our other locations, and applied that to the new Liberty branch that we've built as a branch, and Liberty Township has been growing so much these last, decade or so, that we knew we needed something. And, even before I started, the fiscal officer at the time, our executive director, even I think before him, they were trying to find some land, some kind of property, some way to get a foothold in Liberty Township. And, things weren't really lining up, or things would kind of almost get there and not quite. So to have the shopping center opportunity was also a way to none of this other stuff is quite coming together, but we've got this opportunity. So let's take that and show up for this community as best we can right now. And that'll give us some time to work through the other details. I'm glad that we got to show up for that community in that way, and then take that excitement and interest and bring it to the new site. And just to see, be able to say to the branch staff, look, you have, a break room and a work room and meeting rooms. And, you actually get to experience, to have the library experience that maybe you thought you were getting when you applied for a job here. Just to be able to build that out, support those folks in, the work they were already doing with our patrons, but to give them more materials to offer, more services like the study rooms and things like that. It's been great to see everybody's responded so well to it.
What goes into constructing a new library?
There's a lot of, kind of trying to figure out okay, which functions need to go next to which other functions? Do you want, are there things that you're hoping to maybe make available before or after hours? Okay, those should be here in the building. Are we going to have, the automated materials handler that checks the materials in for the staff? Okay, then that needs to sit kind of here. You want the meeting room to be divisible or not? Do you want the children's department to be the first thing people see, nice and colorful? Or do you want it to be tucked back a little bit so that little kids, if they get away from their caregivers, somebody can catch them before they go out the door? So a lot of, you usually want the busy things to have some distance from, places where people want to settle in for some quiet work. So you really want to think through, that kind of thing. And, thinking about, okay, well, the piece of land we have, it slopes this way or that way or wherever for drainage, we need to have it over here, over there, but the property lines are like this and the easement is like that. So there's a lot of, you want the building to flow in a certain way. You need it to sit on the site in a certain way. Just trying to think through those kinds of things. How are people going to pull up to it? What's the traffic on, what is that going to do with the traffic on the road, the people across the street, down the street, up the street behind? So you're trying to, kind of find the best fit for all those considerations. And then, we knew, we had some borrowing patterns to go by with the mall branch, but we could also tell just, the way the community was growing, that, we know we're going to need, this kind of assortment of children's materials, but we're guessing a little bit more when it comes to teen, adult. We didn't have quite that, the stronger usage numbers there that we, had for the children. So just, trying to kind of piece together what should that look like. We want the design to be, we certainly want people to, feel inspired and, to come in, but can we also the supply chain is all messed up. Can we get what we need to make that happen within the budget we have? And are there the tradespeople to install that? Liberty, especially, that was a big factor because, again, coming out of COVID, building and materials, we actually had to go out to bid, a second time, breaking the project up a little bit, which was unexpected. So the building was actually supposed to have opened earlier than it did.
Oh.
It was supposed to have been built and finished earlier than it ended up because, we anticipated that first time to bid would be it, and we'd get, folks to work with and go forward, and that is not how it shook out. So it was just a real lesson in being, and, the architecture firm we worked with, they had experience with libraries. That was very helpful. The construction firm, they had experience building libraries. So they were able to, the library we built over here, they actually wanted XYZ, have you thought about that? Or, and we would say, well, yes, we see why, but we're trying to do this. Or we'd say, oh, that is a good point. What do we want to do about that? Okay, let's do this. So it was, there was quite a bit of give and take. And so that was, but it was a learning process the whole way through, for sure. But and there were times when I thought, oh my goodness, this is, I don't know where this is going to go. But, we got closer and closer, the roof, and it all kind of, I tried to get some pictures every time we were there, of, what was going on and the progress we were making. The community was so excited and so involved. Our neighbors across the street, the Lakota Family Y, they've been great. They were great to work with the whole time. We hosted open houses there. They were so excited. So it was just, it took a lot of people rowing in the same direction for longer than we expected. It was a heavy lift for everybody to make that happen. But the excitement ever since it's made it all worth it.
Well, so speaking of the same, how has the branch been received?
Oh my gosh. The numbers that we're seeing, thousands coming in the door, it's hard to believe, but, every time I'm there are just folks everywhere. There's so many people who never had a library card and now they're getting them. They haven't had one in so long. We're welcoming them back. And we've been able to work with the Butler County Board of DD in having the universal changing table, which we were also able to work with them on having that here at Westchester. So to be able to welcome in an even wider array of people in the community has been really rewarding, and we're glad to be there for them. We've also had it's very close to the Cincinnati Children's Liberty Campus, and now that we can be kind of a destination for those families, somewhat more than, it wasn't quite as handy at Liberty Center as it is here. So, we're seeing some interest from those folks who, the appointments they're going to, they're probably not a lot of fun for the kiddos. So to have our facility nearby that they can kind of come to and just do regular kid things is really rewarding as well. But yeah, every time I'm there, the parking lot is full or nearly so. There's, folks waiting outside the door to get in. And yeah, like I say, there's folks, who are coming back to libraries for the first time in a long time. And, people using the meeting rooms all over the place. I mean, every time I go in and I'm thinking, oh, well, I'm going to take this quick meeting on my laptop, and I go looking for a study room. It's like, oh, okay, well, good for us, good for them. I am not sure we're going to do my thing, but I'm glad everybody's here. So yeah, it's been really rewarding. Yeah.
So you mentioned this earlier, that the MidPointe Middletown branch offers us the services of a case manager or a social worker. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us more about the service, how it can be about, what they provide, et cetera, et cetera?
Sure. So we had heard of libraries offering, working one way or another to bring social workers in as a resource across the country. And we kind of focused on our Middletown location because the folks who need those human services kinds of things, we see a higher proportion in that part of our service area. We started to look into like, okay, what would this look like if we tried this out? Our previous fiscal officer, one of her projects was analyzing literature on that and everything. And to have someone who's also very focused on the financial picture look into it and say, oh, we really should try this. That kind of helped give it a boost. So we looked into it, and I may not say this quite right, because again, this is a little bit outside of my expertise, but the state of Ohio, the licensure requirements were such that a social worker had to be like under the supervision of another social worker in order to meet all the state requirements. And it was like, we can't quite do that. So what else could we do? And then the executive director was like, well, maybe we can partner with somebody so it's their employee, but they're placed in our location for some part of the week. Okay, well, let's dig around, see what we can find out. We have had our current case manager now for, I guess, 2.5 years now. That seems right, which is amazing. And there are so many people that she's been able to help. Her schedule is always full. She does primarily work out of our Middletown location. That seems to be the most successful way to run this, but every branch has her cards, has put people in touch with her. She's able to, help email, phone. She'll say to people, okay, take this form, fill this out, drop it off. The folks at the desk will take it for you. We'll get this taken care of. And so, and we've been able to partner with her organization on some different programming, different events. Just recently, we partnered with them on a trunk or treat that was very successful. So brought, families by the library that maybe wouldn't have otherwise. So, she's been able to connect with other libraries in the state of Ohio that have a social worker or case manager. So they've been able to learn from one another. That's another service that you wouldn't have imagined, not that long ago that the library would ever look into or have. But it's just been a great example of, let's try something. Let's learn some things. Let's try it again. And, it's just made a huge difference for so many people. I mean, I don't know how many times she said, this person was in tears because I was finally able to get their birth certificate, get them in touch with these folks. Finally their number came up for housing. She's, so happy to be part of the library. And she's been able to do some training and kind of, let the rest of the staff know in a little bit more detail, what is it that we can do for folks? What else? What can you refer to? Maybe try these, if she's not here that day, give them, this information or that. So it's made a huge difference. It really has. You mentioned funding, so I guess I'll kind of bring up, how do the library's levies impact our public services? Sure. So like I said, for a long time, the state of Ohio used primarily a certain amount of income tax to support libraries across the state. And that was the case for, I'm not even sure how long. But, the first part of my career for sure. And then around the time of the Great Recession, when, funding everywhere for everything was just all thrown out of whack, more and more of the libraries in the state started to go to putting property tax initiatives on the ballot. And, so that not only was, there was money still coming in from the state, but they were also looking to the residents of their service area to, pitch in that manner. And at this point, our first one for MidPointe was, I think, 2010. Yes. And I think some libraries had gone a little earlier. I think some of our larger metros had been a little earlier on that, but I think the big wave was around that time. And at this point, it is, it used to be more like, 1/3 of our funding, 2/3 was coming from the state. It's crept more in the direction of being about half and half. So, for example, and I guess to illustrate, when I first started with what was then the Middletown Public Library, the money was still pretty much coming from the state direction. And we had, for our entire service area, so half of Butler County, we had 3 locations, and we had our homebound service. And everybody who lived had to come to one of those 3 locations to get library service, or get signed up to get books in the mail. And the bookmobile, we were in between bookmobiles at that time as well, so we did not have that option. Butler County was already growing at a pretty fast rate at that point, and it's only continued. And having that additional funding coming in lets us meet our communities closer to where they are, and offer a wider variety of materials, a wider variety of operating hours, services. So if we didn't have that, the funding makes, there are a number of things that we would have to, wrap up. We'd have to sunset pretty quickly. We might have to start, right now, like, for example, the makerspace material, that we charge cost for that. That might have to look very different if we could even keep it going, to give just one example. Printing right now, we have a contract with a vendor. It's so much per black and white color. That might have to look different. There are a number of things that we would have to have some pretty difficult decisions to make if we didn't have both of those funding streams going in. I will say, we've also worked to, primarily our executive director worked to set up a foundation, brought in, a development director to look at those different funding opportunities. So, we're certainly keeping an eye out for what else is available, where else we could go with things to bring in that support. So we're trying to, kind of weave more of that in and out, but to have either steady, reliable stream just drop away, that would be pretty challenging for the things that people have come to expect from us.
So you mentioned that you've had, we'll say, 2 careers at MidPointe.
Yes.
As you mentioned, that was Middletown Public Library when you started.
It was, yeah.
So you worked at you said the Westchester branch?
Yes.
So then you left and came back. Can you tell us about your previous position?
Yeah. So I was hired at the Westchester branch on Cox Road of what was in the Middletown Public Library in June of 1999. It was my first job out of library school, and I was hired as a reference librarian. It was even a more traditional looking library than where we are today. Lots of like oak paneling look, and walked in, and the children's section, and it had actually been, it was built in 1983 and expanded once for the children's area, again for like the kind of to add more of like what I thought of as the magazine room. And then while I was there, they added on like a workroom area and the book drop area. And but the children's area had like a fun mural on the walls. And so I was hired to work primarily at the reference desk. So it was, kind of a big horseshoe. And, I was there through my shifts, and I'd be, helping people with, we actually had like several aisles of reference collections. So I'd be, helping people with like, let's look that up in this big set of volumes of the 20th century literature criticism, and our back issues of magazines. Like, it was very much almost what you think of as like an academic looking library, really. But we had all kinds of folks coming in with all kinds of questions. People were still getting used to the idea of searching on the internet. I actually, one of my tasks was I wrote the first set of FAQs for our first website. As I remember when it was like, oh, we're going to have a website. It's going to do this, and it's going to say this, and we need somebody to write this part. So that was fun. We had these little @ symbol, little gizmos to pass out to people with our website address on it. It was so much fun. Probably my favorite reference question had a couple actually. Probably my favorite was a youngster he was like, "Do you have Romeo and Juliet in English?" And I tried to explain it. It is in English. It's just an older form. And then there was a woman who was looking for support groups for OOBEs, and I said, I'm not familiar with that term. Can you tell me what OOBE is? And she said, out of body experiences. And I did my best to find something. And I think I said, well, you might check with maybe New Age bookstore kind of a place, at the time when there were a wide variety of bookstores, of course. So we had, it was also there was a lot of Harry Potter excitement at that time. The first several books in the series were coming out. I was able to plan a Harry Potter kickoff party with some of the children's staff. We had a whole a Harry Potter Jeopardy program. My sister who she was really good with chemistry. She came in to be the potions master for our program. We had just a lot of fun with that. But it was a lot of just different questions, different things, here's this, we had our ready reference. We had the aisles of reference materials we'd be taking, here's this, here's that, here, I'll walk you over to those and come back, keeping an eye on the internet stations. And, the demand was pretty high there. So being like, okay, you've had your hour, we've got people waiting, you've got to, and then every so often we'd hop over and cover the children's. Every once in a long while we'd hop over and cover circulation. And we got to do a little bit of everything. And, it was just quite a cross section of folks. We were, that part of Westchester, we were also pulling in a lot of folks from Mason, more and more people from Liberty Township, people from Sharonville. So we were seeing, a variety of folks asking a variety of questions all day long. We had people signing up for story times, and the phone, our phone was the one that would ring. So as soon as it was, 10 a.m. on the morning of sign up, it was, filling up the story times. And so, yeah, it was an adventure. I got to do a little bit of everything, really. Yeah.
You mentioned it was your first job after library school. Mm-hmm. What brought you to the library system? Was it opportunity or? Yeah, opportunity.
I grew up in Cincinnati, okay. And I actually, my mother, one of her closest friends had moved to Westchester, when the first subdivisions were going in, when the Lakota High School was still just one. And I can remember driving out to visit her, and I thought, we're driving forever. Because, growing up on the east side of Cincinnati, it felt like forever to get out here. But, it was amazing to come out for my interview and be like, wow, it's it's kind of grown up out here. And then even during the time that I worked in that building, the Voice of America property was, divided, sold off. The shopping center started up. That whole corner where there's, so what would that be? The northwest corner of Tylersville and Cox. That was still farm. I can remember the literal dented silo of the one building. And then for a while there was a little, I think the family opened a bar called the Dented Silo. And now it's built up with, just all kinds of things along that corner, along the other one. It's just, just Union Center really was barely coming together about the time I was leaving that job. And, so to come back for the interview for this job, I was like, wow, I thought they'd grown up before. It's just layer upon layer now. So it was an interesting time to be, in this part of the community and, fresh to the career. I started in June of 99, so there was a lot of talk about what are the computer systems going to do at 1/1/2000, the whole Y2K issue was we started to we'd been putting people's birth dates and things in as just the two digits of the year, and it was no, we better start putting 19 whatever so that we make sure we get ahead of the Y2K bug. So it was Yeah, it was a little bit of everything. One of my coworkers, she's actually how I met my husband, because her boyfriend was had gone to college with the man who's now my husband. And she was like, so she made sure that we were both invited to the same party. And that's how it went. The next week we were out on a date, and we've been married 23 years now. So I have her to thank for my husband. So yeah.
So speaking, so you left the system. Did you end up working here at the Westchester branch before you left? Okay.
No, I left in January of 2006, and they moved in here towards the end of 2009. Yep. So and I remember there were efforts to, because the branch was bursting at the seams. Like I say, they'd expanded it in literally, I think, every direction they could. And the growth in the area was just kept booming. I think by the time I left, they had split the high schools. That sounds about right.
Yes.
But just things were not lining up. And I remember thinking, they're never going to move out of that building. And then the TIF district, and things started to fall into place. I do remember coming to visit the new Westchester building, probably, I don't know, a year or so after, because even though I was living outside of Dayton at the time, we would come to visit family in Cincinnati. And so there was one time I was like, we could hop off and visit. I want to see what it's like. So I do remember at least visiting one time, but no, my whole time, that whole stretch of my career was in that old building. And, to see it right now, they're building the new Kroger over, on that ground. And, I'd seen the fencing go up. I never did get to see it after, when it was the senior center. So I guess they had really reworked the interior quite a bit. But I never did get to see that usage of it. And then I saw the fencing come up. And then one day I was driving by and I was like, it's half gone. It was so startling to be like, I knew it was coming, but here it is.
How is the library different from the library system, Middletown Public Library system as it was known then, different from when you left and when you started and you left to when you came back?
Sure. Gosh, I will say it was encouraging when I was looking at this position and considering applying to. I knew I'd stayed in touch enough to know that several of the folks I'd worked with were still here. So it was reassuring to know that there were folks that I knew and respected had found it to continue to be a rewarding place to work. That they were still felt like they were making a difference. So it has, gosh, the material, it was still very the traditional collections. Your books, magazines, movies, music. The idea of, I don't even know what we would have made of circulating board games or doing passports or, like the idea of a makerspace, none. It was what the things we were circulating. And like a lot of libraries at the time, it was your usual, physical items to check out, take home, read, return. So, and those new collections were, kind of already several of them were already in place when I came back. And I remember, coming my first day back in, back in this new position, that being shown like, and here's our book bike, and here's our, here's see, we have these science kits. You can check out a model of the brain, and just such a variety of things. We self-check. I can remember people just waited in line at the circulation desk with their materials, and the line would come across the library sometimes because people were just waiting to check out. And it's the idea of people checking their own things out. It was just what would that be about? By the time I came into this role, Monroe had been open maybe a year and a half or so. Trenton had moved into its larger building. I can remember when I was at the old Westchester building, I was part of the customer satisfaction survey committee. So we used to actually have a little paper form. There was no there were no Google reviews or anything like that at the time. So, people would fill out a little paper form and drop it in this little box with a little lock on it. And quarterly, we'd get them all together and we'd all come. And I remember going to, the old Trenton branch hosted one of our meetings, and we were almost in each other's laps. It was so tight in there. So, Trenton had moved into its current building. We were getting ready to open the Liberty. So just, we'd been able to go to where more and more of our community was. We were able to offer them a wider array of materials and services to take advantage of. There were just, there were so many more layers, so much more texture to what we could make available.
Can you talk a little bit about like the centralization or the systemization of the library? How I think prior to your leaving, the branches were more, I say, standalone in their operation, and then when they came back, we had a more, unified service, I would say.
Yes. At the time that when I was, in my initial role, each of us who had like a reference librarian type position, we each had a collection we were responsible for. So the first collection I managed was actually the CD-ROM collection, because we used to check out, I forgot about that part, we used to actually check out like computer games on CD-ROM and these special little cases, and we'd, go on, we'd go to like, I think Micro Center a couple times a year to buy new ones, and they were cataloged in-house like everything else was at the time. And then I moved on to the large print. So, I was going through the catalogs and marking the things I wanted and managing that budget. But yeah, it was those of us who were handling those collections at our different locations would be in touch with each other and say, oh, I ended up with 2 of those and 3 of those. Well, I think my folks are going to want, this one more than that one, et cetera. So we would definitely talk with one each other, but it was more of like, well, the patrons I see every day, I think this is what they would like. We had some ability to run some reports with some kinds of usage, but it was pretty rudimentary compared to the kinds of data we can get now. And so that was, I remember the branch manager before Steve Mayhew was the branch manager at the time for Westchester when I worked there. You could tell that like sometimes folks would kind of buy in just what they were personally interested in and not always quite so conscious of a well-rounded collection as maybe they might have been. But I think, when you only had so much data to go by, this looks good. Not always, thinking that people might want some other things. So, just being able to use some of that data that we can now has made a huge difference. We did not have, we had interlibrary loan, but it wasn't anything like the Search Ohio service that we've become used to. That made a huge difference. And then I can remember like even transferring materials from like our branch to another, it existed. Like we had that, delivery back and forth every day. We'd also be calling each other back and forth too. Like, I think there were certain collections that there were certain ones we still had to call each other for, it wasn't part of the computer system. So, to just be able to, run a list and everything that anybody needed was going to be on there and you could just send it off. It wasn't quite that seamless at the time. And actually our, I don't know how many people remember this, but the computer system that we had, the integrated library system also had like a little mail feature. So that was, you had to keep up with your Dynex mail and your GroupWise, which was the email we were using at the time. And, so yeah, it's kind of funny to think about like all this new technology and like, well, can we use this for this and that for that? Well, no, this probably works better as this and this probably works better as that. And, I can, the people place things on hold and the time limits for things. There's more we can offer because as things have gotten built out, there's more features we can turn on and offer to people.
I know from experience, you're involved with several local community organizations. Can you tell us about some of the work you do with them and with whom?
Sure. So probably the one that I've been able to be most involved with is the Lakota Optimist Club. So Optimist International has existed about 100 years, give or take, and they have chapters primarily North America, and then I think a little bit like through the Caribbean. I don't think they're as quite as worldwide as some of the other service organizations you might think of. We'll turn 50 in April of 2026. So looking forward to that. I'm grateful that we were able to set up a display in the cases here around the fireplace at Westchester. It was a great opportunity for the club. But over the years, we've sponsored different fundraisers, pancake breakfast and scavenger hunt. And our longest running is the Run for Youth. So it started out as a 5K with like a kids fun run attached, and because the kids portion was getting so much attention and the different PE teachers from the elementaries were really getting competitive about it and everything, that's ended up being the piece of that event that's lasted the longest. So depending on who you ask and how they're counting, I think we just had our 33rd event. And, so the kid, each finisher gets a ribbon. The top 3 finishers get, should they get trophies? They get something. And then the school with the most participation, like they get a big trophy. And, it's just, a lot of fun for the youngsters. I think found out recently the current Lakota West either track or cross country coach, I think cross country, had actually been a participant in the Run for Youth. So, we've been around long enough to like kind of be part of the youngsters like progress towards, participating in fitness throughout their lives, making a career out of it, that kind of thing. But, and we use that money, we turn that around to donate to different organizations. And so we, as a club, we support Reach Out Lakota, Edge Teen Center, Boys and Girls Club of Westchester Liberty. We donate to both the West and East bands, to the Angel Fund for West and the Hobie Fund for East, to kind of support the youngsters who need a little extra help to do the different band activities. So, we just try to turn, we raise that money and then we turn it back around to support the tagline of Optimist for a long time was Friend of Youth. So we're always, really trying to make sure that the money we're raising goes right back into different youth-oriented efforts. This is my second year as president. I'm the first female president of the Lakota Optimist Club. And I joke that it only took like 48 years. The other previous presidents kind of don't know where to look exactly. But it all worked out, didn't it? So, but yeah, we meet at the Lakota Family YMCA, but we've met several different places over the years. I think right now we're at 17 members. We make it work. So the person who is our official photographer is also the person who pulls together our Students of the Month. That's another big project for us is teachers and other folks can nominate deserving juniors at West and East to apply to be our Student of the Month. And then we choose one from each. They come and they tell us about all the different things that they're up to and, what their experience at Lakota has been like. And then as seniors, we send out an application and then they apply, and then we pick a senior from West and a senior from East to be the Student of the Year, and we present a scholarship. So it's $1,500. We joke with them. It's not going to cover everything, but it's, one of our members jokes, it's a burger and a book that your parents didn't have to pay for. So, we try to help out in that regard as well.
So real quick, if someone wants to get involved, do they reach out to you?
I'd be happy to talk to anybody about it. You can find us at Lakota Optimist Club on the usual social media channels. And I think our website is just lakotaoptimist.org.
Perfect. Mm-hmm. So we're getting to the end of the interview. Mm-hmm. Do you have any other memories or projects about the library you'd like to share?
Oh my goodness. Let's see. We hosted the Westchester Symphony. Like the old Westchester building had, a big stretch of just grassy land behind it. There was kind of like a detention basin that was usually a pond. So I can remember having the Westchester Symphony come and play out back. I can remember hosting different presenters at, I helped bring together some of the different presenters and programs. I remember having like a personal organizer come, and the meeting room was packed. So that's a perennial thing, people wanting to get organized no matter what decade it is. I can remember like standing there over the fax machine, because that was how you got your PR releases out was faxing them off. For a while, not only did we have the Pulse Journal in Westchester, but there was also something called Westchester Week. It might have had another name at one point, Westchester Press or something like that. But for a while, we all took turns writing articles about the library's collections and services and programs. So I don't know if I still have any of those, but I can remember taking my turn in those. Here in this role, gosh, I mean, like I said, I mentioned the lobby van, the case manager, working on the makerspace. The kind of the first iteration when we first opened. That was quite an adventure. I was the one who like placed all the initial orders for the machinery. I mean, I remember like I was trying. I tried so many times over to order like this one particular 3D printer from the Czech Republic, and I could like never get the credit card processing to go through, and it finally worked. And I was like jumping up and down, running around like I finally ordered it, and people were just looking at me like, "Yay!" So just working on that was. That was really rewarding, and to see all the interest in that and how that's grown has been, it's just, we weren't sure how that would go. It was one of those things where it's like, you kind of have to take a leap sometimes. Like, I know nobody's really asking for this, but I think if we put it out in front of people, they're going to find ways to make use of it, and that has turned out to be the case for sure.
I think the question everyone's been waiting for.
Oh boy.
Can you tell us about your time on Jeopardy?
Oh, that seems like another lifetime ago. So at the time they opened the tryouts, like, every so often they'd be like, okay, watch, go to this website to try out on this day. So I did the online trial. And I remember thinking like, and I was, at the time, my oldest was a toddler. So I was pretty sleep deprived still, and just, not things that were top of mind at that time were not the kinds of things Jeopardy categories are made out of. And so I thought, I don't know if I did very well. Well, then, I don't know, within a few months, I got a call or an email or something saying, oh, we're going to have in-person, we'd like to move you on. We'd like you to come to an in-person tryout in Pittsburgh. I was living outside Dayton at the time. And of course, at that time, like, I came down with like a terrible cold. So I was like full of cold medicine. I go out here and I'm just like, I don't think I did very well at all. Drove forever to get there and back. And I thought, and then I guess by February, I got a call like, we'd like you to come to Los Angeles to tape. And I was thinking to myself, what? Really? But, made the arrangements, and they were just, everybody who associated with it they were so nice. They were really trying at the in-person tryouts and there at the studio, they were, really trying to make people as comfortable as possible, because they're trying to make like good looking television. So they want people to, be comfortable and everything. And they would give you some tips, like while you're at home, before you come out, watch the show, practice like ringing in, they'd be like, take a pen that like, you have to click and, practice ringing in, because that's really the biggest trick. And they even said, like, at the point that we have you on TV, like, most people know most of these questions to go with the answers. The timing of it is the thing. So they, and I don't think you ever see it from home, but at the time it was Alex Trebek was the host, and he would read the question, and if you started ringing in while he was still reading the question, like, you'd basically lock yourself out. And then while your thing was resetting, there were these lights that would like, they would light up at the top. And then as he was reading, they would, go like, so that by the time the lights went out, he should be done reading the question. You could ring in, but if you didn't get that quite right, you locked yourself out, or the other people jumped in. And so it was, that was a whole nother thing, in addition to like being on TV and trying to keep your mind, your head about you, and looking in the right direction. And, and they were, you want to wear like these colors and not those patterns, because you'll blend right into the background. And just, it was such an adventure. And, I still to this day, and I was talking to my husband about this the other day, and he was like, if you'd bet bigger on the Daily Double. And I said, I think about that more than is probably healthy, believe me. Cause I was lucky enough to get a Daily Double, and they asked me how much to bet. And I went kind of conservative, and you know, he even asked me, you know, you wish you bet more, don't you? I said, yeah, because I knew it right off the top.
11,000 if you're right. Here is the clue. Last name of paleontologist Richard, who was director of the National Museums of Kenya from 1968 to 1989.
What is leaky?
Leaky, yes. Don't you wish you had risked more? I know. Go again.
I still have never watched the episode, actually. It aired, so they tape about 3 months ahead, and they'll tape like an entire week's worth in a day. And so I came in third. I know, spoiler alert, I guess, at this point. So it aired the first week-ish of June of 2008. I knew it when it was coming on, because they tell you, okay, yours should air like blah, blah date. And I turned it on, and then I saw myself come on the screen, and I turned it off. Something about, I just could not. I still have never watched my wedding video either, which actually that was like my fun fact that they, you know, ask, you know, what do you want to talk about? So it was just, it feels like another lifetime. Like I said, it's like hard to believe now that I ever actually, that happened. But yeah, it was a great adventure. Even if you come in second or third, you do take away some portion of winnings. Usually I think it's, you know, the idea is at least covers like your trip out here, and, you know, maybe, you know, you can treat yourself to something fun. So, but yeah, it was a great adventure. And, you know, we'd grown up as a Jeopardy family. Like on Friday nights, we'd get together with pizza, and we'd each have our, like, you know, our pads of paper that we were keeping score on. And it is, you know, one thing to be sitting there on your own couch with your feet up on the coffee table, like, oh, why? How come they didn't know that? Or, you know, why'd they ring in if they didn't know? And it is an entirely different process to have it happen to you. So yeah, it was fun.
Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So, last question.
Okay.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I guess I just think of like the funny things that would happen in the old building, you know, like I can remember chasing birds, like somehow birds would get in, and I can remember having to chase the birds out. The sprinkler system would leak sometimes. And I can remember like one of my coworkers, she heard this like weird noise in this closet and opened it, and the sprinkler system, like water had kind of like exploded, and she was wearing like this white sweater, and she's like, look what, like she had to go like buy a new sweater at the Kohl's next door because like it was just such a mess. And that was the other funny thing, like since we were right next door to the Kohl's there in that shopping center with the Kroger, like we would often come in wearing like the same sweater, just different colors. And so just that kind of thing. I've stayed in touch with so many, you know, even the folks who haven't stayed here as colleagues, I've stayed in touch with. One of the pictures I have is like several of us at my baby shower. I feel very fortunate to have found a career and a workplace that, you know, where we can make such a difference for so many people. I grew up as a library kid. You know, I would always check out this one book. They actually, like, I had aged out of their summer reading program. At the time, it was the Public Library of Cincinnati, Hamilton County, but they let, like, the children's librarian was like, you can stay in, it's okay, Brielle. And I can remember like riding my you know, banana seat bike with the streamers on the handlebars over to the library and getting my books. Like I was just like, you know, kind of that quintessential, you know, grew up with her nose in a book kind of kid, and then worked after school shelving books at the Hyde Park branch of Cincinnati. At the time it was an old Carnegie building. They had a fish pond in the children's area, and I can remember like fishing a kid out of the fish pond. So, you know, and I remember thinking, I was in high school, you know, at the time, graduated from Walnut Hills, and just thinking to myself, what am I going to do for work when I grow up? And I thought, well, I'm kind of already doing it. So a lot of folks come to librarianship as a second career from often teaching or some other kind of, you know, more like service kind of thing. And, you know, if I wasn't the youngest in my library school class, I was one of the youngest because I came to it first as my first career. So I just, you know, I feel so lucky. I really do to be here and to do this work.
Well, we're lucky to have you.
Thank you so much.